Welcome to my OB-6 Prophet6 sort of shootout comparison, really. I've had both of them for quite a while now, and I've not done a video because there's lots and lots of stuff out there on the internet already about, you know, the differences and the similarities between the two of them. You know, in really good detail as well. But after playing the Rev 2 a couple of weeks back, and I was thinking, do I keep the Prophet6, you know, keep the Rev 2, or do I sell this? You know, trying to work out, because I don't need too many poly synths in the room. I just thought, actually, there's nothing out there that shows what they sound like when you're trying to make a sound. So if, you know, you're in the middle of a mix, you're writing a thing, you need a string sound or you need a lead sound. Which of these would fit better with your style of music, maybe? So, you know, let's have a little listen to that. And at the end of it, you know, potentially which one, if you're going to buy one, which one would you buy? So we know the Prophet6 is sort of roughly based on the Prophet 5. You know, people will tell you it doesn't sound anything like it. I've no idea. I've never owned a Prophet 5, but, you know, it's a really nice synth. And this is based on the OB-8, is it? Or the OB-XA, or one of those, but it's Tom Oberheim. It's got the SEM style filter, so it is completely different in its filter to this, but on a lot of other levels, they're really similar. So, without going into too much detail, they've both got two oscillators, 1, 2, 1, 2, with a sub. And the sub on this is a square, the sub on this is a triangle, and they're both 1 octave below oscillator 1. You've got sync on both of them. Both of them you've got, you can latch the VCO2 to the keyboard, obviously, or you can detach it, more importantly, and you go to low frequency. So this makes it sort of like an extra LFO. On this, you have VCO1 is slightly different to VCO2 as it doesn't have a triangle. This goes straight from a sawtooth to a square. Whoops, what have I done there? And this one goes from a triangle to sawtooth to square. As does oscillator 2 on this and oscillator 2 on this. I don't know why this doesn't do it. Maybe that's just sort of a legacy thing. That's what Oberheim's did. And they obviously all have pulse width modulation. And you can change the pulse width, and it goes through 0 on both of them. So same on this. Right, let's put it on the pulse width, shall we? Doesn't go through 0 at the top. Does at the bottom. This goes to both. So, you know, there are minor differences in them, and you can hear straight away that they do actually sound different. So let's pull up the initial patch on both of them, which is just a sawtooth on oscillator 1. Straight away, a different sort of sound, isn't there? This one, at the minute, is sounding a little bit crisper, maybe. Warmer, but sizzlier. You know, it's hard. I think this one, in general, sounds a little bit more crunchy, maybe. And this sounds a bit smoother. That's just my take on them. So coming to the mixer section, independent controls of VCO1 to the sub and noise, 1 to the sub and noise. Digital noise generator on both of them. Filter section, I'll come to that later. We'll have a nice little play with that so you can get a real good feel for the differences in the sounds. They both have a filter and amplifier envelope dedicated, bipolar control of the filters on both. This obviously has an envelope amount for the high pass as well as the low pass. This doesn't have two filters, just the one SEM. Moving on to the modulation section, very similar again. Both got a single LFO. They've made these, when you play them with the two of them, actually, it's quite annoying because they're so similar, but the layout's different, so you're trying to figure out where's where. On this, you've got sine, sawtooth, reverse saw, square, and random. On this, you have a triangle, not a sine. So slightly different again. Frequency 1, frequency 2, pulse width of 1 and 2 together, amplitude and the two filters separately. On this, you don't have the two filters, but you do have a filter mode, and you can independently change the pulse width on these. Minor differences, but nothing that really affects the sound of the instrument, which is what I'm really going to talk about. Effect sections are the same. You've got two effects per voice, or, you know, per sound. and these are essentially exactly the same. I've not actually gone into detail to check if they're the same or not, because they do the same sort of job. This has an independent distortion control, which this doesn't, and I think that's Tom Oberheim didn't want distortion on this because it sort of doesn't fit in with his legacy instruments. But to get the distortion on this, I think you'd hold this, there you go, distortion, and then turn it up and down. Don't know why that's gone so quiet. Probably because the pulse width was low. Bit awkward, easy just to play with that. But I'll show you that in again in a second. They both come, well, they don't come with editors. You can get editors for them. I think it's like about $60 or $70 for one, or $99 for both. On each of them, you got a standalone and a plug-in version, same for them. And they're really they're good for looking at the sounds and for trying to work out if you've got, find a nice patch, what's going on with the patch. But you know, they're good, they're not brilliant, they're all right. They're nowhere near as good and as solid, I don't think, as something like the Sub 37 editor. I'm always losing MIDI control on them and stuff like that. It always comes back, but they're not as rock solid as you like, but they're there and you can use them. To the sounds. So as ever, let's start off with a simple sawtooth, and you can hear the difference. Differences in volumes again always are. Just holding that on, you can hear a little bit of movement in that. Doesn't sound like a sample of a sawtooth, does it? Same with that. So they're both quite nice from that perspective. And looking at the oscilloscope, you can see they're both different. As you can hear from the off, they do sound different. So let's add a sub to that. So again, as with the Rev 2, actually, this has got the square, and I think it gives it a bit more, I don't know, grittiness. Again, the sub on this sounds like a sub, sounds like it's underneath the sound rather than part of it. But that's just because that's a triangle and that's a square. But if you're using it for sort of bass sounds, for example, that does make a difference. Let's put Unison on, and let's just check it's on one voice, so acting as a monosynth. Big difference there. Faster, isn't it? That's smoother, fatter. Okay, let's change that from a single voice in unison to all the voices. So 6. And detune it using a slop. Try that up here. That sounds nice and rich. That sounds like the devil's coming to get you, that, doesn't it? And we've not touched the filters yet, don't forget. I can't believe the difference in those, actually. I've never tried that before. Let's just check that everything's in tune. I know it is, but it's just such a massive difference. Unison off. Unison off. Oops. And now that detune's really detuning it. Slap off. Just check again, sub-octave off. So yeah, it makes a big difference, doesn't it, that? So let's just add a little filter to that. So I'm not looking at the filter yet, but just to give it some. So there really are huge differences, aren't there? Let's add a bit of distortion to that. So get the distortion on this, press effect, turn it up. As it go up to 127, so that's just about halfway there. Hit the portamento. The resonance, obviously, because that's self-oscillate. Can't do that on this. As this has sort of progressed into a natural discussion about the filters, let's look at them in more detail. High pass and low pass, this is 24 dB self-resonant. That's got resonance on the high pass, but it's not self-resonant. And this has this SCM style multi-mode. So it goes from low pass through to notch, through to high pass, and blends in between. 12 dB, and it's not self-resonance. It also has BandPass as well. Let's just see what that sounds like, shall we? Do something similar on this. So nothing radical there yet, but let's bring in some resonance, shall we? That step in there is Dave Smith helping us tune the filters to semitones, which I'm not really keen on. If you do add envelope amount, it'll go smoothly. Let's just show you that quickly. There you go, so nice and smooth. Any sort of stepping you hear there is just the resonance picking out the harmonics. Let's do that here. Not going to sound the same, are they? So let's knock the resonance down a little bit. Okay, so put it onto high pass mode. Resonance up. They're very similar, aren't they? No, not that much. But do the same job. They're both non-self-resonant. However, with this one, you can then bring the low pass in. So there's lots of things you can do there. So you've got the high pass with the resonance on, chopping off the low frequencies, and you've got a low pass chopping off the high frequencies, so you can get all sorts of sort of smiley shapes. Hard to control it as a BandPass though, while you're playing at least. But you know, that's a BandPass. Ah, BandPass on this. So you can do those sorts of things with it. This really does excel though once you start bringing in, say, the BandPass and playing with the filter frequency on a chord. So let's put a chord on. Nice. Try something similar on this. Turn the volume down. So yeah, again, you can get similar sort of noises, but easier to do that sort of thing on this. I think this one does sound grittier. You know, I'm not going to match them precisely, but you're getting a feel, hopefully, for the differences in the sounds. Okay, let's add a little bit of an effect to that. What have we got here? So I'm not managing to match them up. I'm not, you know, I suppose not really trying to, because what I'm doing is trying to show the, you know, how they sound. So we've got the high pass, we've got sort of a band pass, we've got high pass, we've got a band pass, but now we do have the notch as well as the low pass. So the notch, this can't do. So what we're doing is we're just taking out a little notch in the middle, and by adding the resonance now knocks out the notch. But let's just have a little listen to it. So what we're doing there is I'm just modulating manually the notch frequency. This can't do that. This can do the self-resonance, but this can do the notch. And now this is where the SEM comes into its own, the SEM filter. Got a little blend there between the low pass and the notch. And it's beautiful, you get that sort of really rich low end, but still with a little fizz at the top. So yeah, quite different. Which one do you prefer? Which is most useful? Which can get most sounds? Who knows? I think this one is probably sort of more standard, isn't it? Standard low pass with a high pass. Well, this is special. I did a sort of a soft synth review of what soft synths can sound a bit like this, and the Access Virus can do the notch as well. And the soft synths get pretty close actually. Well, that's a beautiful sound, but you know, that's £2,500-ish, something like that, to get that. Gorgeous though, that, isn't it? As is that, but different. Okay, hopefully that's given you a really good feel for the types of sounds they can both do. You know, as you're playing with the filter, the sort of grittiness of them or the smoothness of them. So to that end, I've made a few sounds, tried to match them up to sort of, again, to show the similarities and differences. So this is a patch I made, I think this is the first thing I made when I got this, hence it being 000. And I thought I'd do a sort of typical OB style bass sound. Now they don't sound the same, I wouldn't expect them to. It's as close as I could get it. I could sit here and show you me tweaking for hours, because they did take ages, these. So you can see as I'm playing with them, So different, I think this one sounds better, but that was an OB style noise that I was trying to create on this. Still nice though, but for that sort of sound, that wins out, I think. Really nice sound, sort of thing I'd use. This one's sounding richer and smoother on that again, isn't it? That's more precise, sort of, you can feel like I want to do some sort of plucky noises on that. So I think that's where I went to next. So the effects off for a second. For that, this one, it's more precise, that, isn't it? You can hear that little fizz in there, can't you? So take the notch out. So tweaking and playing, this one, just as I'm doing it, it feels like it's doing what I want it to do. This is a little bit more mushy maybe. And I don't think it's the envelopes. I did spend ages messing around with these. So for that sort of thing, I think this one's working better. So I thought I'd start from scratch and do something similar again. Maybe I could get them closer, but this is how they're naturally going as I'm tweaking and playing and just trying to make the same sort of sound. Smoother, grittier. all beautiful, that, isn't it? On these, I've copied the effects on both. I'll take the effects off just to show you. I love that, just coming from the low pass, bringing in a little bit of notch and changing the filter frequency. So on this you can get those lovely sort of self-resonant bits, but on this you don't really need them for these sort of sounds. Just so nice, isn't it? As is that, but again, different. So I got carried away doing pads. I've got loads of examples of those, but they sort of show the same thing over and over. Here's a little arpeggiated noise. So they can be really similar as well. The biggest difference really is when you're bringing in the notch and your sound really depends on the filter and those lovely filter sweeps, which I think is where this really does come into its own. I think the bass sounds on this are grittier. I think on this they're smoother. I think that really is the overriding thoughts on it. If I could only have one, I think this is more flexible in a way. It can get more sort of standard sort of sounds from that, and this is a special. It's a special type of sound, but yeah, it is. It's if you've only got one poly, that might be the way to go. But if you've got other polys, this really does offer something different. And I hope that has been of some use to somebody somewhere. See you next time.